Today I'll show you how to easily achieve the cinematic film look with any camera using Dehancer for Final Cut Pro. A quick disclaimer before we start: Dehancer sent me a free 1-month license to make this review, and once it's published I will also receive a lifetime license. However, they did not review this video before publishing, and to my surprise they actually encouraged me to be as honest and transparent as possible when reviewing the plugin so they can make improvements if necessary. Also, I'm not really an expert when it comes to analog film. I do kinda know how to differentiate a digital and a film look, but when it comes to the science behind analog film, I'm not really an expert at all. With that said, let's start. So first of all, what is Dehancer? Dehancer is a film emulation plugin that essentially makes your digital footage look more like analog film in a much easier, faster and accurate way than doing it manually. The lifetime license costs $449 for the Pro version and $199 for the Lite version. You can check out the differences between the two down below, and if you decide to make a purchase, you can enter the code ROMA10 at checkout to receive 10% discount on all Dehancer's products. Dehancer works with various software such as DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, After Effects, Photoshop, Lightroom, Capture One, Affinity Photo, and even have an iOS app. However, today I'm mainly going to focus on the Final Cut Pro version as that's what I use for editing. So let's jump into the computer and I'm going to show you how everything works with different types of cameras. Alright, let's start color grading this clip I shot in S-Log3 on the Sony ZV-E1. First of all, I'm going to convert this S-Log3 shot to Rec 709 with this color space transform tool inside Dehancer Pro. You have different cameras to choose from and different sources and so on. I'm going to choose Sony ZV-E1 S-Log3 S-Gamma 3 Cine. I'm also going to slightly decrease the exposure because this shot is a bit overexposed. I'm also going to slightly correct the white balance. It's a bit too red. Let's push it towards green. Something like this. All right, let's move on to the next section, film, which allows me to select a film stock. You have 63 film stocks to choose from. These ones represent the actual film stocks that professionals use in Hollywood movies. I'm going to select Fujicolor Natura 1600. And I'm going to also play around with this push-pull EV slider. This slider basically allows me to push the color towards warmer tones or cooler tones and also decrease or increase the contrast just slightly. In this case, I'm going to push it towards warmer tones and then I'm going to adjust the contrast individually. Somewhere around here looks good. Next, I'm going to enable the film developer section, slightly increase the contrast, not really touch the gamma correction. This one basically pushes the midtones towards the shadows or towards the highlights. In this case, I don't really need to do anything with it, but I am going to play around with the color boost, which basically adds saturation. 45% looks good. Next, I'm going to enable film compression, which basically compresses the highlights just like film. I'm going to play around with the impact, select the white point, play around with the tonal range. It basically allows you to choose if you just want to target the highlights or maybe you also want to touch the midtones as well. In this case, actually, I do want to affect the midtones as well. So I'm gonna go about, let's say like 35. And I'm not going to do anything with the color density. Let's move on to the expand section, which allows me to further adjust the contrast by moving the black point up or down. I'm gonna put it at about 1 or 2. I'm also going to slightly decrease the white point to make the image a bit brighter. Somewhere around here. All right, next is the print, which allows me to select a print film. My favorite one so far is the Kodak 2383. Looks very cinematic, so to speak. I'm also going to enable the analog range limiter, which basically makes the contrast a bit softer from my experience at least. I'm also going to slightly decrease the contrast in here, just a bit. Push the white towards warmer colors. Let's play around with the density as well. Maybe increase slightly the color density by a couple of points. Next is the color head section, where it allows me to play around with the colors and further color grade the clip. I can play around with the tones of the highlights. I like them to be a bit yellow, just like so. I can also move the midtones. I'm going to warm them up a bit as well. I'm going to cool down the shadows. I'm not going to touch these sliders in here, which allow me to push the frame towards magenta green, yellow blue, cyan red. Not going to touch these. I think this one here is more than enough. All right, I'm pretty much done with the color, contrast, exposure adjustments. Now let's move on to the more artistic stuff that comes with when shooting in film, such as film grain, which is very popular. We have costume presets for film grain. It goes from 8mm, which is the strongest one, up to 65mm, which is the least strong and the most clean. In this case, I'm going to customize it on my own. I'm going to put the size to about, let's do like 8, amount, let's do like 29, resolution, which affects the overall sharpness of the frame. I'm gonna leave it at about 60, something like this. I kind of like it a bit soft and more filmic. I'm also going to slightly decrease the grain in the shadows and in the midtones. Let's see also how the highlights look. Something like this looks great. As for the film type, I'm not really sure what this one is doing, but let's see. Negative. So negative is much stronger, it seems. I'm going to leave it at positive. And the mode, I'm also not sure what it does. Digital. Okay, the analog one definitely looks much more natural. Now let's move on to halation. As you can see, it adds halation over the most contrasty areas, especially where you see something very bright with a very dark background. So here's how it looks at the strongest preset, 8mm. I think actually this one is stronger. Yeah, as you can see, it's very strong and pronounced, which I don't really like. And I think for this one, I'm just going to go with the preset 65mm. A very minor difference here, but it definitely adds to the overall look. Next, I'm going to enable bloom, which basically diffuses the highlights. Again, I'm going to select the 65mm preset to have the least amount of bloom because I don't want to have too much bloom in the highlights. Also, you can enable the mask mode in here and precisely adjust everything as you want by going to the costume preset setting here and adjust everything yourself, but I'm just going to use a preset because it's much easier and quicker. All right, the last three ones, I haven't really used them that much because they just add artifacts that I don't really like film damage, which adds hairs and scratches on top of your footage. Just like this, as you can see. I don't really like this that much, at least at the moment. Film breadth adds color artifacts and exposure artifacts. If I move this clip around, you'll see it changes colors. I'm not going to use that. And gate weave basically adds shake to the footage, just like film. When it's in the camera, sometimes it's moving and shaking. Again, if I'll scroll through this clip, you'll see that the frame is moving, shaking. Finally, we have vignette, which is self-explanatory. Play around with the size, also with the feathering, also with the aspect ratio. Here we also have some monitoring tools like false colors to see that everything is properly exposed. You also have this clipping indication monitoring tool. Let me show you how it works. So if I'm going with the black point to like 30, you'll see blue in here, meaning that the shadows are underexposed. Same thing applies to the whites. If I'm going to go all the way down, you'll see red, meaning that the highlights are overexposed. Finally, we can also adjust the total impact of the effect. And we can also create a LUT with these sizes and use it in a future project. So I think the results I got from Dehancer speak for themselves. Now let me show you some other examples with different cameras, but also I want to show you some other clips with the ZV-E1. So I have here this clip with my friend Pascal and also this clip. And all I'm going to do really is just copy this, select these clips and paste Dehancer to them and look at the difference before and after. Massive difference, and it looks good already. Let's see the next clip. This one is definitely a bit overexposed, but it's still kind of usable. I can go to the white point, slightly decrease it here, and also can go to the film compression and slightly compress the highlights a bit more. Something like this, and now it looks much better. Alright, now let's see some examples from a different camera, the Sony ZV-E10, which shoots only in 8-bit. So again, I'm just going to copy the effect from here and paste it in here. Now it looks really bad actually, and that's because I'm using the correction of the ZV-E1 camera. So I'm going to disable all this stuff here. And because Dehancer doesn't have the ZV-E10 camera in here with my costume settings, I can use the A6400 camera, which is basically the same sensor as the ZV-E10, but I'm using costume settings with ITU 709 matrix format. So I'm just going to do it manually with the built-in tools inside Final Cut Pro. I'm going to hide this and just add saturation about 60%. And I'm also going to add color curves. And I'm going to put these two effects before Dehancer to retain the most amount of information and dynamic range. So let's start with the curves, and I think I'm going to slightly increase the contrast in here and decrease the highlights just slightly. And then I'm gonna come back to the Dehancer and adjust the white balance. I think this is a bit too blue, so let's warm it up a little bit. Let's play around with this. Maybe we can select a different film stock. Let's go with one of my favorites, Portra 800 or 400. The 250D actually looks great, a bit too red. And I'm going to play around with the compression a bit. I'm also going to slightly increase the contrast and slightly reduce the color boost. Now let's also play around with the white balance in the print section. Let's warm it up a little bit. Let's add some contrast. And honestly, I think this shot looks fantastic now. Now all I'm going to do to the other two shots from the ZV-E10, I'm just going to copy the effects from here, paste them in here, and already it looks much better. I just need to adjust the exposure with the color curves in here. I can also adjust the white balance. I think in this case I'm going to slightly cool it down, maybe slightly increase the contrast, play around with the compression. And I'm kind of happy with this. Let's actually copy the effects from this clip and paste it on this clip. Fantastic. Maybe I can slightly increase the contrast, just like so, but it looks awesome in my opinion. Alright, the last two clips are from the DJI Pocket 3 shot in D-Log M. Let's start color grading these. I'm actually going to copy the adjustments from here and paste them on this clip with the basic corrections, because unfortunately Dehancer doesn't have a camera profile for the Pocket 3. So I am going to slightly increase the exposure here, the contrast as well, and come back to Dehancer, and I'm definitely going to warm up this image a bit. I'm also going to change the film stock. This one looks actually quite nice. Going to reduce the red tint a bit, play around with the contrast here. Let's also play with the film compression. Maybe also we can choose a different print film. I think the Kodak 2383 looks the best. I can increase the contrast just slightly, and let's play with the colors as well. Warm up the highlights a bit more. Also warm up the midtones. I don't know, this shot looks a bit too blue for me. So I'm going to slightly increase the temperature. You know what? We can also increase maybe the halation because I think it's gonna work well with this clip. So let's go to the halation. I'm just going to select a stronger preset. Let's go 35 millimeters. And yes, it definitely looks natural with this kind of a clip. Now with the second one, I'm going to do the same thing. Just copy and paste. And honestly, I don't really have to do anything in here. It looks great as is. Maybe I can play around with the temperature. Or not. It looks fantastic as is. I don't really have to do anything. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this video and found it to be informative. I definitely enjoy using this plugin. I think you can get fantastic results with it really quickly and really efficiently. However, it's not perfect. The main downside I see with this plugin is the performance. I don't know if you noticed, but it runs really slow, at least on my computer. So check this out. If I'm going to hit play here, it's going to lag like crazy. And mostly it happens because of certain effects like the bloom, halation, grain, and film compression. If I'm going to disable this completely and play again, as you can see, it runs smoothly. So I'm not really sure if it's not optimized well or maybe it's too demanding for my computer. I have the 13-inch M1 MacBook Pro, maybe it's too old, but it definitely is annoying when you want, you know, to preview the footage. And it happens also when using proxies, not only without proxies. But my recommendation would be to have good performance is to adjust everything you need, including the film compression, grain, and all the other effects, and then disable everything until you finish with the edit, then enable everything and render out the video to have a smooth editing experience. Other than that, I think this plugin is fantastic. It delivers great results really quickly and efficiently, but the performance is a bit slow, at least on my computer. Also, the price is kind of steep. If you are buying the Pro version, $450 is kind of steep, but you do get what you pay for. You get fantastic results. If you really want the film look, you will get it with this plugin. But for most people, I think the light version is going to be the most suitable one. You get the most essential features with that package, and I think most people should get this package, the light package. But if you're a professional, then the Pro package definitely is worth it if you need all the other tools that is not available inside the light version. So I definitely recommend this plugin. I like using it, and I'm definitely going to make more videos about this plugin. I actually want to shoot a 4x3 video with one of my cameras and only color grade it using this plugin. So let me know down below if you have any questions or comments, and I guess I'll see you in the next one. Peace.